Hey, Jack.
Hey.
Or should I say, get out of me, swamp!
I had a feeling something was going to happen when I saw the green under the green.
Well, I realized this would completely put me into shadow, and so I looked up, and from the heavens, a knit Shrek hat appeared.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back to Dweeb Wars.
Welcome to Dweeb Wars Covers Amazing Race. I'm currently on the last legs of a lollipop from the amazing assortment from Sweet Tooth Fairy that Scott and Lori sent everybody. I haven't tasted any of them yet.
Yeah, so what that entails means that they sent us 14 lollipops. Each team had a flavor. And we've been eating each team that gets eliminated.
But
however,
you
I
saved me, Courtney and Jasmine's pineapple paradise, because
Yeah.
you know I like pineapple.
I do.
And it is absolutely delicious.
Yeah,
I'm
of
eating it.
course, this week, sadly, spoiler alert, I had the Lori's Fab Life, which tasted to me like pink lemonade.
So what happened first?
Okay, oh my God, we stayed in those homestays.
This is going to be horrible, this smacking of this lollipop.
Yeah, maybe,
I'll try not my best.
yeah.
And if I don't succeed, you have to forgive
Just go
me.
out of frame.
Yeah.
Okay, so homestays. We lucked out. We actually got a apartment that wasn't attached to someone else's home, so we did have some private
Other people
space.
had like some people behind a curtain.
I think
yeah.
Nick and Mike were literally just behind like a sheet that
Yeah.
separated them.
I think the tough thing about this is that it obviously was getting emotionally more hard for everybody, and there were these little things, right? No running water that you could just drink or
yeah.
brush your teeth with.
True.
Like normally we're getting as much food as we want to fuel
Oh, yeah.
ourselves up for the next leg.
This
That
was, like,
wasn't the
A
case.
pastry in the
Delivered in a
morning.
brown bag. Yeah. So there were some things. I think it was hard for this leg to be the one that we had to do
Yeah.
this, but it
And
was
not
cool.
only that,
It was
you
cool.
could hardly sleep because there was a spider in the room that I refused to kill.
Now, as a
because,
spider's enemy,
yeah,
I will say it was horrible.
There was this like trim at the top that was open air,
Oh,
so
yes,
it was like
open air.
open air to the outside, so
And
like
so we had to
mosquitoes
sleep-
and bugs could come
We had
in.
to sleep in DEET.
Yes, we slept in deep because mosquitoes were in there, and then also, of course, there were the fucking geckos above our heads that were.
And we really do mean that. There were two geckos having intercourse above our bed, and
that was kind of awesome.
that was probably
actually.
the most beautiful thing we saw.
Yeah, it was actually awesome. That
yeah.
entertained us for a
Yeah,
while.
it was. Oh, look at those things!
Yeah.
We were really going crazy.
The Alyssa moment of her
Oh my
blowing
God,
coffee
yeah.
into her nose was really cute. We're getting a little more of like cute Alyssa and Josiah, I feel like, this episode, which is great because they are cute.
They are so cute.
They are cute.
Yeah.
Jonathan and Anna rip open the clue, and they're the first to find out that we're going to the Sacred Monkey Forest. Then we're something like 45 minutes after them. Of course, then we get there. Oh,
Scott and Lori.
well, we get there first, and we're like, hey, guys. We're like, thanks for the 20 pounds. No bad blood. But then Scott and Lori show up, and they are pissed. And
Yeah.
she is like, why would you do that? I thought we were friends. And then Jonathan, we're then like, you guys were right behind us.
Yeah.
And like, we wanted to, slow down the teams that were right behind us, which
Yeah.
I get. That was awkward. Oh my God. You could see how awkward we felt during that moment as well.
Yeah.
Literally, like, the whole time.
You were Sacred Monkey Forest.
I know,
yeah,
literally.
yeah.
So that was definitely stressful, and
I think it's the curse of, but it's a curse and the great thing about games like this, which is that the teams don't have so much time to talk.
yeah,
So I believe you have to go sort of on your instinct on what is, like we were talking about, like, so there was a gay, like we were like, okay, we probably wouldn't do the gays in, but that's hanging on by a thread.
Right.
You know, at any
Yeah.
moment we could, like,
Right.
depending on whose game it's going to help, like, I think they'll betray us, like we might betray them. It's like it's hard to know. And I want to validate Jonathan and Anna's viewpoint of it. I also want to validate Scott and Lori's. Like,
Yeah.
via these conversations, like, you could have taken anything from what we were saying as, like, no, that's what we are going to do, or
Right.
that's what we should do, or, like, that would be a thing to do, is,
Right.
like, keep us in the
I
front,
think that is the hard part of like non-direct communication. Like if someone brings something up to you and you say like, yeah, sure, you know what I mean? Like if maybe I think we did say, the three of us I think had a conversation like, let's keep the top three at the front. And it was like a yeah, sure situation. Now,
See, but even between teams, like, I actually remember it where it was like, strategically, that probably would be the smart move.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think anyone was presenting it as like a we are gonna do this, but I think we definitely had talked about it. All teams had talked about it as a strategy.
Yeah.
But I don't ever remember it being presented as like, this is what we're gonna do.
No.
But it was like, should we do this? And everyone was like, it could be interesting.
Right.
And then it's like, different teams are going to take different stuff from
right.
that, you know.
That's always going to change on a whim. It might change 5 seconds later.
Of course. Yeah.
We did
what
yoga.
was not shown was Han did a yoga session for everybody. We all did yoga all together. She led us through this yoga session, which was peaceful. We had all come together in a blissful, meditative moment before walking through the monkey forest and reaching the live double U-turn vote.
But even before that, that was where, and I think we've been given the okay to say, Han disclosed that she was the one who peed.
Yes, yes.
On the way to the mat, the previous episode. Then she opened us up to us there. Because we were there for like hours before it opened at 8.
Yeah.
Opened up to us that she had in fact peed. That also is when we started to, I think, start warming up to Han.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then we see Phil. Shoot.
Yeah, we knew something was up.
Oh, it even makes me anxious, even just like thinking about it, talking it through. Phil lets us know that we are going to be doing a double U-turn vote. There's no abstaining. You can't not vote.
Yes. And a lot of the podcasts have been, I think, that we've been listening to have been confused by this. We were not allowed to discuss. As soon as he announces it, we are pulled to separate areas, and we are not allowed to scheme with other teams. We simply have to decide for ourselves, amongst ourselves. And once you choose, you cannot switch.
Yeah.
I think there was a little bit of confusion on like,
can you pile on?
Can you pile on? Can you hear that somebody else is voting for something and then change your vote? You can't change your vote.
Yeah.
And so all of that was really, we were in our heads. We were in our heads. We had heard this thing that happened on the mat with Scott and Lori.
Yeah, I think Mark had pulled us aside to be like, did you guys hear about like the mat where spoken about that? And we were like, no. So that kind of gave us like a little
inkling.
Maybe it won't be us. But I think at the time when we were there, we were like, it's definitely 50-50. Like, I think we were like, it could be us or them.
I think I was like, I'm going to assume that it is going to be us, you know, and then, but let's try to strategize. Obviously, our only goal here is for it not to be us. Yeah. It's what it has to be. With what we were doing at that point in the race, it was like the only thing we could do is save ourselves. What is that going to mean? I think we went back and forth. We were like, Scott and Lori, we're hearing that people are going to vote Scott and Lori. Does that mean people are not going to be voting Jonathan and Anna, and then it's going to be us?
Yeah, like too many people actually were on that mat. Because there were like 6 people.
There were a lot of teams, right? So
mat.
we're like, if we're doing the numbers, if all the teams vote for Scott and Lori, then second place is sort of up for grabs. And I think that's why we decided to vote for Jonathan and Anna, because we needed to save our skin. We were certain we were gonna be up there, but that's not how it turned out, and we felt super, super, super lucky about that. Yeah. And a little bit of both. I think in the car you hear us being like, no vote. It must be our social game, right? Yeah. But I think we were fully aware it was a little bit of both. It was so luck, timing, and I also think we were playing a good social game.
So we got out unscathed, 4-1 to 1. Mm-hmm. Nick and Mike with the stray vote. Yeah. With the catching strays.
Mm-hmm. But they also talked about the boy teams. Right. Yeah, because that was why they voted Nick and Mike. Right. And then they said they believed us to be the strongest team.
Right. Which was interesting. I guess they didn't want to, I think they didn't want to make more enemies. You know, we had come up to them that morning being like, we're good with the 20-pound thing. You know, like they didn't want to burn that bridge. Obviously, we ended up burning that bridge.
Yeah. But at a time we had
to burn some.
We had to. Yeah, we had to.
I don't think anyone would have been happy with our vote because I think to the point of, yes, we were good at socializing with everyone. We had made good relationships. The problem with that is then everyone's going to be mad if you vote for them. You know what I mean?
No, of course. Right.
Then we scurry on over to the detour. Oh, my God. And even before we make it, that's where unaired Scott and Lori apparently hit a bird on the way to the detour. Because you do notice in the show that they sort of show up like last or like next to last at the Detour, and your brain is like,
Yeah,
why did that
yeah,
happen? Because they
why?
should be booking
Out of
it
there,
out of
yeah,
the forest
yeah.
and get like the first taxi.
Did they even get a new taxi?
No, I believe like he just had to like fix his mirror, or I don't really know. He at least had to check it out. Like he had to
Yeah.
pull over and check out and assess the damage.
Whoa.
So that sucks because
Yeah.
also in the end, apparently Scott and Lori were only behind Anna and Jonathan by like 6 minutes. So I don't know how long that would have taken, but who knows? Coral or coconuts?
Coconuts.
Our thinking here was clear. They showed it on the show. Like we wanted to take a swim.
take a
It
dip,
was like
yeah,
not
yeah.
really more strategic than that.
And I forget who said it, being like, there's so many, unless there's something that's clearly, I think, unless there's something that's clearly like, oh, it says you're playing soccer, one of us is a soccer player, right?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
says you're doing this, you know that really well.
Yeah.
We both actually are really good swimmers, so it wasn't even just like
Yeah.
we want to swim, but we are really good at it.
Yeah.
But we knew it was going to be attention to detail. But I also think that unless you are so set on something, or if there's any clear indication this one's going to be way longer or something, if you have no other things to go off of, you have to do the one that's more fun.
Yeah,
You can't
definitely.
overthink it, because you have to go like, what's going to be more enjoyable? Because if this is going to be our last time here,
Yeah.
might as well do something that's iconic
Awesome.
and fun. Yeah.
So then we show up to Coral. Brett and Mark are there. I mean, Amazing Race, it challenges, like, if it's not brute force, there's got to be some pattern recognition. There's always going to be some catch, I think.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just trying to figure out the catch as quickly as possible.
A little bit behind the scenes, I think that by the end of this day, we had realized that Jonathan and Anna were super not happy with us. And I think a little bit of that was going into our being like, humph, like, you know, like our comments about like, well, we figured it out really fast. You know, it's
Oh,
like, yeah. And although I do think we were able to tell, I'm like, I want to give them some credit of like, it probably, they were in a unique mental
Yeah,
headspace
absolutely.
from that day.
But
you
also,
know?
I think I would have said that about Scott and Lori. If I had
Yeah,
seen them
right.
when they were there
Yeah,
and they
true,
were
true,
struggling,
true,
I'd
true.
be
Yeah,
also
yeah,
surprised
yeah.
because anyone I think
Yeah.
that you see as like
Really, yeah.
really good at this game,
Yeah.
it's always surprising when something goes wrong.
Yeah.
And like,
Did you hear about the Scott and Lori dry coral?
yeah, dry coral gate.
Dry coral gate. And then on the way out, I had not seen this at the bar. I don't remember seeing this, but I do remember in real life. It's such a vivid memory
Yeah.
of us telling Scott and Lori, pay attention to the colors, because, of course, they always say in a U-turn, it's like if you're going to vote for someone, it's you need that team to go home, because otherwise you're going to have somebody who, you know, maybe wants payback and things like
Yeah.
that. So it's like it was in our best interest to help Scott and Lori.
Absolutely.
Because we had
Voted Jonathan and Anna.
voted Jonathan and Anna.
Yeah, we didn't want retribution. So we help a little bit. I think people go back and forth, right, on like how much to help in the Amazing Race. Something that I think is not fun to watch is when you're like standing there with a team and like helping them all the way through, do the challenge for them, you know?
Oh yeah, of course,
But
of course. This cost
I
us
think-
nothing.
yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, it could have helped us a lot.
Yeah. And
You know,
so-
like if Scott and Lori would have stayed in the game and we would have had an ally
Right.
in them, like it probably could have helped.
And
our
then
game a
they
lot,
still
yeah.
would have been the target of teams that had voted for them. You know, I think
Yeah, exactly.
it's a two-pronged thing. Yeah, and so we try to help them, like the colors matter. I think that's what we said. We were like, pay attention to the colors in the coral.
Yeah.
Then they're like, thanks guys, love you.
It felt almost like a
Battle cry.
Battle
Or
cry.
a death rattle.
It was like
Death
a death
rattle.
rattle. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do remember, which was so crazy because I didn't feel as though they were like so far behind, and obviously
they
they
weren't,
weren't, right?
yeah.
But it did in that moment. I remembered being like, oh my god, it's as if I looked in their eyes and they were like, this is the last you'll see of us.
And I think that ultimately comes from not just because we helped them, but because we were like to the point of Lori being like, they're not my sons, right? They had such a relationship with so many of these like boy teams on the show, and then they were scorned by both the other young boy teams, like Brett and Mark and Nick and Mike had voted for them.
Yeah,
So we
yeah.
were like the only like sons
Yeah.
they had left.
Yes, they felt scorned, and I think that's how they felt, and I like want to validate that they really felt that.
Yeah.
I also want to say that like I don't blame Brett or Mark
No.
or Nick and Mike, right, for making that decision or like using whatever they needed to use in order to get farther in the
Here's
game.
the
Like,
thing.
you know,
It's a game. You
Yeah.
must use every single
At your
thing
disposal,
that
yeah.
you can. If
Yeah.
you can convince people that someone is doing a bigger social game than they are. That's literally all Survivor is. Mark is very smart also, I think, as a strategic social player.
Yeah.
And so I could see him trying to make that happen also just to save his own skin, which
of course,
totally.
Of course.
Every strategy in the race is valid.
Yeah.
But it's also valid to be upset by that. I mean, it is just a game, but it's also a game with a lot at stake.
Yeah. Then
Coconuts.
I do remember seeing those people lug those coconuts through.
Miz.
And it was Miz. It was Les Miserables. It was Les Miserables.
Yeah.
Like,
no, they
look down, look down. These coconuts are ripe. I don't know. Damn, they look.
Yeah, they looked
sad. We take this taxi to
Nusa Dua
Beach, but the address was a restaurant. I love using this little lollipop as a pointer.
To point at
you.
Me.
We go to Nusa Dua Beach, but the address that we were given is a restaurant. And then we open the clue that says who's ready to meet. We're in first place and who's ready to meet their match, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be like sort of a mind matching game, which famously I did win Brain Surge on Nickelodeon when I was 10 years old.
Right.
Insert here clip.
This gentleman right here is Carson, and he has cleared the first 2 levels. Okay, this is where he got hung up last time. He's there! Oh, Carson! Hit it, guys! Oh! It is awesome! How does it feel? Sticky.
Challenges.
A huge win.
Yeah, got slimed.
What did you win?
I won a trip to San Francisco, and I won a bike, and I won an electric guitar.
1 key cash from Expedia for a trip for 2 to San Francisco
SF,
for 5
California.
nights.
Anyway, that was a mind match thing is something I'm really good at, and I anyway, I have history with.
Mm-hmm.
But you thought it was a cooking thing because of the restaurant, and then also match like lighting a match, right?
I think we had even talked about like what if it's matching some like mine thing. I can do that too. Like I'm not
of course. Oh my God,
afraid of that. What I am afraid of is more physical labor.
Yeah.
Somehow I've been getting stuck with all of the physical labor tasks.
Why we did choose you. It was because of the restaurant. We were like, if it's
cooking,
cook. I'm a horrible cook.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
That was it.
That was it.
Anything, if it's any of these options, you'll be good at all of them. If it's one of these options, I'll be horrible at it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so we should go with the person.
And not necessarily because
Yeah, but any of the options
it
we
wasn't
were
one of the options
considering.
I was
We
not
didn't
good at.
consider
Yes.
that it would be physical, but.
So unfortunately, me and my little arms, toothpicks.
Oh my God, it was so amazing to watch.
It was so terrible.
I was a little like when you were being when you got passed by Brett later in the episode, I obviously was like, uh-oh. Like if he's really, I don't know whether you're like literally dying out there, right? Like I was a little nervous, but mostly I was just having a ball looking at you.
Yeah.
It was just so.
I know.
Yeah, and just being able to chat with Mark and
I know that was lucky.
Fun. But I also remember in an interview afterwards being like, I love that man, and I cannot trust a damn thing he ever
Mark?
says.
Yeah.
Almost telling the camera, Mark, if you're watching this, I loved chatting with you on the beach. And girl, I don't trust you as far as I can throw you. You know, like, and
Literally.
That's the beautiful thing, being like, I know this man could
gut me like a fish.
If it meant he's gonna get ahead.
Then of course there was board versus decal gate.
Yes. You know what? Why don't you speak to it?
I was being stupid. That said, I actually don't think
you were only stupid momentarily.
It wasn't that big of a deal. I think they made it seem like a bigger deal than it was. I think it was like as soon as I found an orange surfboard out there and it like didn't have the decal, I knew it was no longer
orange.
It was not crazy. And that was because I think I was matching the orange board I was trying to match the orange board with the same decal. Like I was looking for the same exact board and decal.
Yeah.
Then I realized, no. Brett would have beaten me 100 times out of 100.
No matter
what. Like, Brett was, when he dove into that water on the surfboard, like, oh my God. He probably got as far as I did on like one running start than I did in 10 minutes. Like, it was crazy.
Sorry, that just reminded me of watching, because, you know, obviously we're there. You go out, I see you. And or really, as before you even go out, we see Mark and Brett are coming, right?
Yeah.
But you do go out, and then I see Brett come out, and it made me think of that people are also talking about us like telling them where the clue box is. And sort of
being like, why would they do that?
Why would you tell them where the clue box is? And I think it is that crazy. You have to make these split second 1,000 domino routes in your brain. Like, if I don't tell them where it is, that seems shady. Mark just completely led a revolt against Scott and Laurie.
Do I want to be the next
target? Do I want to be the next target? / is this somebody who can help me in the future? / am I, now that I know what the challenge is, do I think that Brett might pass Jack anyway? Right. Perhaps, right? So is this a moment I can actually get a relationship, right? Yeah. By saying something that they're going to find 1 second from now.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
no, absolutely.
I know they're going to spend like 4 seconds looking around, and then they're going to be like, oh, there it is. Right. So if I'm like, oh, there it is, right? Then it can feel, we're
yeah,
friends,
I mean, there were things when we had not given people the clue box.
Yeah.
Like, I think in episode 2 in Kyoto, when we were going for the express pass, Scott and Laurie showed up, and they got lost in the temple, and they were like, Jack, where is it? And like, I was kind of like, you were kicking the ball, and I was kind of like, and like eventually I was like, it's that way, but I didn't really tell them like where it was, because I didn't want them to get the express pass. Like, to me in that moment, that was worth more than a relationship.
Yeah. Han,
girl, you better eat that up.
When I tell you, and I don't need to tell you because you were there, the entire watch party at the bar in Brooklyn erupted into cheers when Han got up on that surfboard. I mean, it was amazing to watch. Yeah. It was incredible to watch.
It didn't feel like contrived at all. It was like a real moment of like, let me do this, have some fun, and
yes. And you know what I think is actually really, really, really even more beautiful about it is that you know that she was alone.
Yeah.
In that, like, she had to come to that decision herself.
Right.
She had no one to ask whether it was okay to do.
No, girl, it was her and her GoPro.
It was her and a GoPro, right? And she not only had to make that decision herself, but she got no applause.
Right.
In that moment. Right?
Just from herself.
And so you feel in that moment that you're like, you're just seeing somebody so rawly
want to do something
alone. And it's such a cool moment.
Yeah,
so
it was
cool.
Awesome. Yeah. That was everything. Now here's where a lot of the, I think there's two camps here. Mm-hmm. Some people I think loved this episode and thought it was one of like the best episodes in many seasons. Mm-hmm. Some people hated it. And I think that comes from a couple different things. Number one, now that we're talking about the roadblock actually, other than us and Brett and Mark, didn't lead to any placement swaps.
Really?
Not at all.
That's so crazy because it's a needle in a haystack, which normally has such varied, stuff.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's just luck.
Or maybe it wasn't haystack enough, I don't know. Then the detours didn't feel like they were something that you could like mess up that badly. Number two, what people had a problem with was that it grouped everyone together to do the U-turn vote, whereas it could have been like, everyone votes one at a time on the route at some point. Like, you show up to the Monkey Forest, and even if you're at 5 o'clock in the morning, Jonathan and Anna places their vote. They then continue the leg. Then we vote, whatever, and then you only find out if you were U-turned, like, further in the leg. But people were not happy with the, what's it called? When we all come together. Equalizer.
The equalizer, yeah.
Yeah, I think people were, like, miffed at that, which I can understand. Like, a U-turn, I think, should be a setback, not a death sentence.
Yeah.
I think there's two camps, right? There's, like, people who want more drama in The Amazing Race and want it to be more like Survivor.
Yeah.
And other people who want sort of, like, the best performing teams to stay so that it remains, like, really competitive from a challenge perspective.
Right. What is interesting is seeing a little bit of both of that. I do want a really competitive race, and I do want to see people reap the benefits of their work. I like a little linear and a little chaos.
Yeah.
And it always sort of surprising me.
To keep people just on their toes, viewers, audiences, players, even the players, for us to have to realize from that point on, like, okay, you know what? Like, never count your chickens.
Yes.
Even more than usual.
Yeah.
You know? And
I
work
think-
harder on social relationships and XYZ. Like, you had to adjust your play in response to that episode.
Yes, there is a thing in game design that is about like a perfect game, or games that are really successful have a ride that line between luck and strategy in a really beautiful way. And I feel like you could look at times when the placement is changing up drastically, right, as luck or unluck, right? Somebody reaches something they just can't do for some reason, or they get a bad taxi, they completely drop in 10 places, right? Or they find a shortcut, they go forward a bunch of places, right? And then like things that are really linear feels good strategically, right? Because it's like the players who are playing really smart, the ones who continue to make good decisions, right, are bettering their game, right? And so I like, you know, how can the race balance those at all times is an interesting question. Yeah. We go to the pit stop. I remember this was actually such a hard pit stop to find. This is why Melinda and Erica jump Nick and Mike, right? Again, yeah. And it was so hard to find. It really was.
It was far away.
It was far away.
People didn't really know what it was called.
Yeah, it wasn't like a landmark,
No.
kind of, right? It was like this small amphitheater.
It was probably like owned by this hotel or something.
Yeah, it like was like a tiny, like no one was like, of course, the theater. Like it's like, it seemed like just a park installation that like, no tourist was really visiting it, you know? It was
and then we like asked for people's phones. They had no service. I think
no
several
service,
times.
yes.
It was like a service dead zone for some reason.
Then we were asking some locals, but then the locals didn't know what it was. If I'm remembering correctly, I thought we were dropping places, like that other people would pass us. But yeah, we eventually did find it, and we had this incredible dance troupe. But yeah, 3 times the bridesmaid.
Yeah.
Y'all will have to tune in tomorrow, I think, to The Amazing Race. Obviously, we don't need to pitch it to y'all. You guys are watching recap podcasts. So
yeah, actually check out our other Dweebor stuff where we talk about nerd shit.
things. Yeah, we need to do a Shrek. Finding this hat made me realize we need to do a Shrek episode.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Love you guys and see you later.
Bye.